The wife and daughter abandoned a man amidst his battle against severe cancer. Years later, they returned seeking inheritance, but a surprise awaited them. David was a strong and focused man, but his life took a huge turn after being diagnosed with advanced-stage Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was a hard blow for someone who always dedicated himself to maintaining a healthy lifestyle, never neglecting his balanced diet and annual doctor's visits for routine checkups. The specialist, an oncologist, had no conclusive answer to give. The exact origin of the lymphoma was still unclear. However, a spark of hope was ignited with the mention of a small possibility of winning the battle through intensive chemotherapy treatment. Firm in his life's purpose, David made the decision to undergo the process, no matter how arduous it would be. When it came time to share this life-changing reality, David gathered the two people who were his lifelines: Jessica, his partner of 15 years, and Samantha, his daughter in the midst of adolescence. "I have to tell you something. I went to the doctor, and he confirmed it's really lymphoma." Upon revealing his condition, he saw the reflection of his own astonishment on their faces, a mix of disbelief and sadness. But even in that whirlwind of emotions, he found the strength to be the pillar that calmed them, promising them he would do everything in his power to beat the disease. "But don't worry, I know we can overcome this." However, there was a big doubt about what effects the treatment would have on his life. He hugged them while pondering this. David remembered what the doctor had told him about the numerous challenges chemotherapy would bring to his body and spirit. Many relationships, pressed under the weight of treatment, end up breaking. He couldn't help but share his insecurities with Jessica, his wife. "Despite what I said, I'm a bit scared." She, with the serenity of someone who shares not only the bed but also the deepest struggles, assured him with conviction that nothing, not even that disease, would separate them. "Remember our marriage vows, in sickness and in health. I'm going to fulfill that until the end." "I don't know what to say, just thank you." David could focus on recovery without the weight of financial worries, thanks to savings, a solid insurance, substantial savings, and a fund left by his grandfather. His family had a financial reserve for situations like this. The house where they created memories and where his daughter grew up was paid for. Even Samantha's academic future was secured with funds reserved for her education in case the worst happened. With practical arrangements in place, he faced chemotherapy. A week after the diagnosis, he began the treatment that would push him to his limits. Each session was a contest, a test of endurance, leaving him exhausted, almost unable to recognize his own body, now weak. Returning home became a ritual of overcoming. The simple act of eating, bathing, or walking transformed into a daily battle against an invisible enemy that drained all his energy. In the face of this new reality, Jessica and Samantha did not hesitate to offer all their care and love. The two took the reins of domestic responsibilities, preparing meals with even more affection, accompanying him together to every chemotherapy session, and ensuring that no medical prescription was overlooked. In every gesture, every supportive glance, they silently affirmed the unbreakable commitment that the disease could shake the body but not the love that united them. David, aware of the tension his health condition could generate at home, made an effort to be as independent as possible, taking advantage of moments of energy to do the tasks he could. This effort for independence extended over long 2 months, but during that time, he noticed a change in Jessica and Samantha's behavior. The atmosphere, once characterized by solidarity, began to tense. A reluctant sigh always preceded the moments when David asked for help, and young Samantha in particular seemed to retreat, sometimes ignoring simple requests like a glass of water or company for a walk outdoors. "Samantha, could we take a walk around the yard? I'd like to get some sun." "Oh, Dad, you know what? I have some schoolwork to do. Maybe another time." However, he only realized how much things had changed one morning when he was running late for a chemotherapy session, and Jessica suggested he take a taxi. The suggestion was given so coldly it surprised him, but he accepted it. Returning home, he could no longer ignore the growing emotional distance between them. After a few hours of rest and gathering strength, David initiated the difficult dialogue. "I'm going to be direct. I've been noticing some changes in your behavior. Can you be honest with me? We need to be open in our current situation." Jessica said, "Look, dear, it's not that we're downplaying your suffering. But we're a bit overwhelmed with all the usual tasks, plus the new ones. Samantha nodded in agreement. I completely understand. I also dislike having to ask for help for everything. So I thought about hiring a nurse. It's something many people do. And my uncle did it when he had hip surgery. Samantha and Jessica accepted the suggestion, and the following week the new nurse Sarah started working at the house. However, the solution that was supposed to bring relief ended up creating a new problem. Jessica felt somewhat replaced and jealous of the nurse's constant presence. Realizing this, David, always balanced, suggested that Jessica resume some of the care as much as possible. Unfortunately, this did not have the desired effect and the problem persisted. Amidst this mix of emotions and misunderstandings, David decided to keep his calm, knowing that any increase in negativity could further complicate his already complicated path to recovery. Later, a phone call added another element to this complex emotional situation. It was the worried voice of his mother-in-law, expressing her disapproval of another woman's presence in her daughter's house. David, I understand your situation, but think about what the neighbors will say. I don't want my daughter to be the subject of gossip, she said. She is just a professional and everyone knows it, David responded. No, David, things don't work that way, she insisted, and the discussion concluded. It was like a maze of feelings and responsibilities, where every decision seemed to have an unexpected consequence. David, in the midst of this emotional storm, remained firm in the only safe haven he had left, focusing on his health and hoping for better days, where physical complications didn't mirror emotional complications. To maintain some peace in his home, which had always been a refuge, David decided to face the situation, maintaining his usual dignified stance, despite being sick and tired from treatments. He sought the understanding and support of his loved ones, remembering his role as the family provider, even during his illness. David explained with kindness and firmness, Jessica, I understand your concerns, but you need to trust me. This is just something temporary, and for now I need Sarah's help. Okay then, Jessica accepted, seemingly resolved to accept the situation. On an ordinary day, after the exhaustion of chemotherapy, David encountered a scene that would remain etched in his memory forever. A moving truck, parked silently in front of his house. He approached Jessica and asked with a mix of surprise and fear, What does this mean? Well, David, this was the best solution I found. Samantha and I are going to live with my mom while you recover. If you need anything, ask Sarah. Are you really going to leave me like this? As you said yourself, it's just something temporary. She turned and continued loading things into the truck with a resolve that seemed unbreakable. At that moment, David felt divided between deep sadness and the difficulty of expressing the confusion of feelings that deeply affected him. The exhaustion acted as a kind of cloak, softening the intensity of his anguish, perhaps as a defense against a reality that would otherwise have been unbearable. Alone in his house, eerily silent without the laughter and affection of his family, he faced the most painful situation. David's journey, marked by the struggle against illness, was filled with challenges that went beyond the physical. The abandonment by his wife and daughter at a time when he was most vulnerable revealed a side of the marriage that perhaps until then he preferred not to see or chose not to recognize. Hoping for better days, the support of the family, especially his brother Gabriel, and the loving presence of Sarah, the nurse, offered David a sense of community and solidarity. This contrasted with the loneliness left by his wife's departure. Sarah's kindness and care were not only practical, but also served as a consolation for the emotional wounds caused by illness and abandonment. When the nurse finally rang the bell at the hospital to signify his physical recovery, it represented more than the end of a treatment. It was the beginning of a new stage, a release from a relationship that did not provide the unconditional support expected between partners. David's decision to file for divorce unilaterally was not just a legal step. It was also a way to affirm and recognize his own worth. He prepared all the paperwork and sent it to his mother-in-law's address. Now, David could build a future focused not only on physical healing, but also on emotional recovery, surrounded by people who showed empathy and genuine support in difficult times. Although the road ahead might have uncertainties and challenges, he was certain that he was taking back control of his life, deciding who would be part of his journey of recovery and personal growth. It had been over a year since he overcame his illness, and David felt ready to move forward. He got in touch with his old job, and they agreed to rehire him to work from home if he wished. He accepted the offer. Despite liking his house, many bad memories were associated with it, and he wanted to start anew in a smaller place. David planned to give the house to Sarah, who had been a great support during difficult times, showing immense kindness despite being practically a stranger. She would have complete freedom to sell it if she preferred. David's new start in a new neighborhood was more than just a change of address. It represented the opportunity to rewrite his story after a turbulent and painful period. His ability to adapt and find solace in new routines and friendships evidenced his resilience and the human yearning for connection and purpose, even after experiencing traumatic events. He befriended his neighbor Mary, who not only offered David company, but also brought the perspective that life could maintain its meaning even after shocking losses, such as the death of a loved one or the end of a relationship thought to be eternal. The conversations between them provided common ground of understanding and mutual support, something only those who share similar experiences of loss can offer each other. David's new hobby, carpentry, went beyond just being a hobby. It was a form of therapy, a way to create order and beauty from raw material, possibly a parallel to the process he had gone through in his own life, taking the pieces and building something new and solid. The search for new tools symbolized the search for new skills and experiences that would help him shape his new reality. It was interesting to note that, despite having overcome the absence of his wife and daughter, the fact that he had no news of them remained a highlight in his story. This suggested that although he had recovered and was moving forward, there were still some loose ends. One day, after a visit to the materials store, Mary made a disturbing observation to David. "I need to tell you something very important. Yesterday, when I was coming back home, I saw two women, one older and one younger, loitering around your house. They walked around several times, knocked on the door several times, and since you weren't there, they got into the car and waited. After a while, they left." "Are you serious?" "Yes, I thought about calling the police, but they could be relatives of yours and I didn't want to interfere. Since they didn't come back after you returned, I decided to tell you." "What did they look like?" "I couldn't see well, but the one who seemed older was about 5'6", with light hair down to her shoulders. The younger one was a bit shorter, but her hair reached her neck and was very dark." As Mary described them, he felt a chill. The characteristics matched those of his wife and daughter. Confusion took hold of his thoughts. How could they have found their way there? After all, only his brother and his brother's wife knew the address of his current refuge. David began to ponder the possible reasons that could have led his wife and daughter to look for him, especially after they left almost a year ago without even a last glance. Mary, always practical, assured that if the two reappeared, he should stay away and let her handle the situation. Deep down, David harbored no desire to expose himself again to the pain of rejection, especially now that memories of that time of abandonment still throbbed in his mind. As the night progressed and a starry mantle covered the sky, David sought answers through a call to his brother. "David, I really needed to talk to you. Jessica and Samantha have returned." "Are you sure about what you're telling me, Gabriel?" "Yes, I'm at your house now with Sarah. When they found out that you had passed the house to her name, they became enraged, broke some things in the garden and threatened her. Sarah called me and that's why I came. She's scared. We're going to the police tomorrow morning." "My God, how can this be happening? Better be careful so they don't follow you." "Too late." "What do you mean, too late? Are they there?" "No, but I almost ran into them. They came here yesterday when I went to a carpentry event. Mary saw everything." A certain relief overtook him, knowing that Sarah was backed by documents confirming the transfer of the property to her name, a transaction that David had completed before closing that chapter of his life. He called Sarah directly. "Sarah, I'm sorry, I didn't know this would happen. Don't worry, I understand. But I need to tell you something. When they came, we argued a lot. I ended up telling them you had died and that you had left me everything. They didn't believe me, and somehow got your new address. I didn't know this would happen. I just wanted to leave you in peace." "Don't worry. This was bound to happen sooner or later," David mused, regarding his ex-wife. She remained a mystery. Whether the divorce notice sent to her mother's house had been acknowledged or simply discarded like another piece of unimportant paper was unclear. David, however, had already faced situations of indifference, reaching a serene acceptance the next morning. While his hands were busy with the day's tasks, David was alerted by a persistent sound of knocking. He quickly turned to the security cameras, and there on the screen was the confirmation. It was them. His ex-wife maintained the same appearance stored in David's memory, while Samantha, his daughter, had blossomed almost into a woman. The difference in height and features marked the time that had passed. Following the plan agreed upon with Mary, David stayed sheltered inside the house but got close enough to the door to catch fragments of the outdoor conversation. Mary came out of her house and approached them, greeting them kindly, showing openness and sympathy, leaving the burdens of the past behind. "Hello, how are you? Are you new here in the neighborhood?" "Oh, yes, we're just passing through. Have you lived here long?" "Well, you could say that. Do you need anything?" "Well, it's just that a man named David used to live in this house." The ex-wife of David narrated a story during the chat. Her husband, or rather ex-husband, had lived in that house until his supposed recent death after a long time in the hospital. David was surprised by the words, since there was no evidence of his death, let alone anything related to the hospital he knew well. The only source of that story was Sarah, which Mary had invented. Serene and direct in her response, Mary admitted, "Ah, yes, David. He lived here a few months ago, but unfortunately passed away from lymphoma. He had mentioned once that he moved here after being abandoned by his wife and daughter. He ended up leaving everything to a girlfriend he found. Today, it's her who lives in this house." Always calm, Mary added that as far as she remembered, David intended to leave all his inheritance to charitable institutions since he was divorced and had no family apart from a brother. Therefore, she expressed her surprise at seeing two women examining the house curiously. With that information, a heavy silence fell among them until Mary, seeking clarification, asked, "But tell me, do you have any death certificate or will?" Their negative response only increased the uncertainty in the atmosphere. Mary, always practical, explained the legal steps to follow. "It's important that you have those documents. Then it's just a matter of going to a public registry, because if you are indeed the legitimate owners, you could obtain the deed of the house in your name." David's ex-wife reacted badly to that guidance, shouting, "Who do you think you are? Don't meddle in what doesn't concern you." The elevated tone and unfounded accusations resonated in the air, disturbing the peace of the neighborhood that had welcomed David so warmly. Though hidden behind the walls of his house, David felt ashamed and the desire to confront his ex-wife's uncontrolled behavior. However, he remained firm in the plan he had agreed upon with Mary. "Please don't misunderstand me, I'm just trying to help. I never meant to offend you," said Mary. And after a few minutes, the two left. When the day's work concluded and silence returned as a relief, David sought refuge in Mary's house. There, with sincere words and genuine sorrow, he said, "Please, Mary, forgive me for what my ex-wife did. I really didn't know." "Don't worry," admitted Mary. "I confess it was a bit comical to see her lose her patience. Yes, I wish I could be as calm as you, but I know what she's capable of when she's upset. And I know she'll be back soon." The next day, while David was dedicated to studying carpentry, a sudden loud noise surprised him. Going outside, he found the window broken and his ex-wife in the middle of the garden, furious. She had shattered the window while the neighbors tried to calm her down. It seemed she had been causing trouble, but David, distracted with his work and wearing headphones, hadn't noticed the disorder. Coming out, he saw two older neighbors trying to restrain her to prevent further damage. "Please, ma'am, stop, don't do that." Samantha and Jessica, armed with baseball bats, had already damaged the plants that he cared for so meticulously in pots. David stepped out of the house and with a swift, firm motion grabbed her arm and questioned, "Have you lost your mind?" Her surprise was evident. They thought he had died and merely intended to intimidate the supposed new owner. "You two, get out of here now," David demanded. "How can you say that?" she retorted. "We thought you were dead. Why didn't you look for us when you recovered?" "Why should I explain myself to someone who broke the promise to stand by my side, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health?" he replied. "But what about Samantha? How could you do that to your own daughter?" David responded, each word heavy with emotion. "She's like you. She also abandoned me. I'm willing to give up my parental rights and her custody." "You should have thought about that before abandoning me," he said firmly. "I want no further ties with you two." At those words, her sadness turned to anger. "You're heartless and selfish," she exclaimed, which in David's eyes sounded deeply ironic given the circumstances. Raising his voice in response, David stated, "You're nothing but an opportunist. I want nothing more to do with you, and I will use all means necessary to ensure I don't have to give you two a penny." At that tense moment, she menacingly raised a baseball bat towards him, and it was at this critical point that the police arrived and intervened. Without hesitation, the officers arrested both the ex-wife and the daughter, Samantha. When asked by the police about the possibility of filing a formal complaint, David did not hesitate. "Yes, officer, I would like to go to the station with you, in the same car as them," he affirmed. As mother and daughter were taken to the patrol car, their tears and laments rose, but he felt no compassion. The entire scene had been recorded by him on security cameras, including the moment the ex-wife broke the window, and the video was already in the hands of the police. At the end of the day, with spirits a bit calmer, David took care of requesting the window replacement and sweeping up the debris. A provisional cover took the place of the damaged window, protecting the house against bad weather, while Mary lent him buckets to accommodate the plants that had survived. "Seems your ex doesn't like plants much, but to be honest, her face wouldn't even serve as fertilizer," joked Mary. David let out a light chuckle and said, "But I'm glad everything ended well. I don't know what would have happened if she had hit me squarely with that bat." Moved by curiosity about what had brought his ex-wife back, David began to seek answers. It didn't take long to discover the recent death of his mother, triggering a series of disastrous events. It was revealed that the house they lived in didn't belong to them, but was owned by an ex-husband of Jessica's mother, and with her passing, the house would go to a nephew of this man, who was determined to sell the property. Mother and daughter were forced to leave, sold what they could of the family belongings, and with few options, ended up staying temporarily in a hotel. Returning to David's old house, they were surprised to find Sarah, who explained the situation, something David already knew. After that, they discovered the new address with the neighbors and went looking for him, thinking that since the divorce was unilateral, they might get something. However, they needed to be sure whether he was alive or dead. The outcome of this mess was the accusation of vandalism, attempted burglary, and assault. Samantha, still a minor, was sentenced to community service, while the ex-wife faced a more severe penalty due to the premeditated nature of her actions. Faced with this situation, David considered the possibility of obtaining a restraining order, ensuring, at least for a while, that he would have no more surprises caused by her. If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. You will like his other stories too. I wish you a good session.